Hey, fourth graders! Welcome to our Monday lesson. Opening up our language lesson with a funny comic from Peanuts, classic Peanuts. Let's read it. The first square says, "Did you enjoy your meal, sir?" Wow, Charlie Brown, ever so polite, even to the dog. "Now, do you wish to pay cash or do you have a credit card? May I see some kind of identification?" And the dog goes boom, right on his head. Silly. Now, there's a reason why I'm showing you this comic, not just for fun, but because it's going to go along with their lesson. Notice what they used here when they were speaking, when the characters were speaking. We call these speech bubbles, okay? Speech bubbles. You see these even in Diary of a Wimpy Kid. You see them when you read comics about Batman and Spider-Man. These are speech bubbles, okay? And if he had a speech bubble or a thought bubble, he might say, "Oh man," right here. Okay, I don't know. I'm making it up. But we like reading comics when they have little speech bubbles. Now we're going to take this into our language lesson. So, all right, in your language books, please go to page 63. Please join me on page 63 in our language lessons. I'll write it down here so you can 63. And like before, if you need to pause the video or rewind, feel free to do that, okay? Page 63. Let's look at the rule up here. A direct quotation is a person's exact words, like word for word for word. Mr. Sanders said, this is exactly what Mr. Sanders said. There will be extra recess on Friday afternoon. That's exactly what he said. Okay, that's the direct quote. An indirect quote tells about what someone said, about it. So they kind of change the words around. So here, Mr. Sanders said that there will be extra recess on Friday afternoon. Okay. So the difference here is that this is exactly what he said, word for word for word. Kind of like if your mom says, you can watch TV after you finish your homework. Okay. Now that's direct quote. You can watch TV after you do your homework. Okay. Now an indirect quote would be if your mom says, if let's say for example, Natalie's sister, one of her sisters tells her, "Mom said you can watch TV." So, or it's just saying something about what someone said. You have to imagine it in the speech bubble. Here, let's try this. Think A. I know it can be confusing, but we're gonna work on it. Place a check mark by each sentence that contains a direct quotation. So this can be a little easy because when they use a direct quotation, there's quotation marks. Ooh, there you go. So of course the first one is, boom, Mrs. Cook said, "Today we will learn about the world's largest rodent." Ooh, I just read that. The world's largest rodent? What could that be? Number two, Ethan said that he knew what animal that would be. Now, we don't know exactly what Ethan said. Maybe Ethan said something like, "I know what you're talking about." Okay, maybe that's what Ethan said. He said exactly, "I know what you're talking about." But we don't know what he said exactly. We just know that he knows what kind of animal. He just said he knows. So there's no quotation mark here. We don't have to put a check mark. The capybara is native to Central America and northern South America, said our teacher. Ah, so there you go. That is a direct quote. Hey, notice the dialogue tag said. Oh, number 4 has the dialogue tag said. Come on, guys, said is dead. I heard, said Isabella, that they are related to guinea pigs. So that's a direct quote. Mrs. Cook replied that Isabella was correct. Ah, finally a dialogue tag that is not said. She said replied. However, notice how this one, number 5, doesn't have a direct quote. Maybe Mrs. Cook didn't say correct, like exactly the word correct. Maybe she said, "You are correct, Isabel." Or maybe she said, "Right, Isabella." Or maybe she said, "Yes, Isabella." But she didn't say like exactly correct, Isabella. She just said, we just know she said something along the lines of, "Yes, Isabella is correct." So let's look at think B. Underline each sentence that has a direct quotation. There are 4 direct quotations. Again, this should be easy because they're using quotation marks. You can probably do this on your own. If you ever see something within quotation marks, that's a direct quote. It is what they are saying in their speech bubble. It's exactly what they're saying in their speech bubble. Even if the speech bubble has the comma and the period and all that. So let's look at Charlie Brown again. Look, in Charlie Brown, there he has the question marks and everything, all the punctuation, right? So I'm going to read the whole paragraph. You just underline any of the direct quotations while I read the paragraph. Ethan enjoyed the discussion of the capybara. He knew some information about them since he had read a nonfiction library book about Central America. From the other side of the room, he asked, "How big is a capybara?" Mrs. Cook thought for a moment before she replied. "The capybara measures up to 2 feet at the shoulder," she said, "and weighs up to 150 pounds. The students in the classroom all muttered exclamations about the size of the mammal. "May we have a capybara as our class pet?" asked Mason. Mason, I didn't know you were in the story. Several students said that they liked Mason's idea. Others said they would bring in a pet, bed, blankets, or food. Mrs. Cook wasted no time stating, "Not in this classroom." Oh man. A capybara that's what does it say? 2 feet and 150 pounds? Sounds like a big animal. Okay, so did you underline the direct quotations? Remember, there are four. The direction says there are four. So here's what you should have underlined. How big is the capybara? The capybara measures up to 2 feet to the shoulder and weighs up to 150 pounds. May we have a capybara as our class pet? Not in this classroom. So this is what you should have underlined. Alrighty. Notice here they use the dialogue tag that we had in our spelling words. Muttered. They use the word muttered. Remember when you mutter, you talk underneath your breath? Most of the time, people mutter when they're upset or angry. But here, the class muttered exclamations. I don't know exactly what they said, though. Maybe they said, "That would be so cool if we had a capybara." Or, "Whoa, capybaras are fat." Or, "Capybaras, they sound like monsters." We don't know exactly what they said. All right. But they did talk about the size of the mammal. So here's a classic example of an indirect quotation. We don't know exactly what the class muttered, but they muttered something. So I don't need to put quotation marks around it because I don't know exactly word for word what they said. Okay? So anyway, here's what you should have underlined for Think B, the four direct quotations. And again, if you have any questions, we'll clear it all up during our meeting. And if you need to pause the video to catch up, that's cool. Let's look at Remember C. Identify each bold word by writing V for verb or N for noun. Iron, number one, is very valuable. That's a thing. That's a noun. Person, place, or thing. Number two, did mom iron this skirt? Do you know how to iron, friends? It's very taxing sometimes, on your arm when you're ironing. So that's definitely a verb, something she had to do. Can you train a dog to sit? Mason, have you trained your dogs? Takes a lot of work, doesn't it? So that is a verb because this is an "oh no, my friend." So this is a verb. There's a helping verb. We had to wait for the train. Trains are big, they're huge, and they're loud. So that's a noun. Did you work on Saturday? Some people do. And that's definitely a verb. That's something they did. Verb. Dad is proud of my work. Maybe your work is you maybe built something or you drew something. So it's a thing, it's a noun. Alrighty. Go ahead and pause the video and do remember D. All you have to do is write the verb in the blank. So this time you're not just underlining it twice, you're writing it in the blank. There's only 4 of them. Go ahead and do remember D, and then unpause the video when you're ready to compare the answers. Unpause? All right. Joseph was taken as a captive. I hope you read them out loud to help you because it really helps to hear the answer out loud. Joseph's brothers were surprised to meet him in Egypt. The men were tested to see if they had changed. Joseph's family was reunited after many years. Amen. So that was our language lesson, friends. We're going to continue this tomorrow with direct quotations, but thank you so much for following along. Be sure to watch our math lesson if you haven't done so, and I'll see you at our next meeting.